Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
Tempest Fugit.
Alan Seiler,
Hi.
and Veronica Dashel.
You stole my line.
I did. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I froze.
Heat of the moment.
You get it on the next loop,
Alan
Veronica.
threw you off.
You get it on the next time loop, Veronica.
There you go. So Charles.
Yeah.
Play the intro again.
Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between.
Yeah, that basically sums up the episode that we watched today. I didn't think about it until you said it in the intro, and I'm like, wait a minute. That's exactly what happened tonight.
Well, before we get into today's episode, we have some Star Trek news.
Mm-hmm.
Holy smokes, do we have some news? So, as everybody knows, we are midway through the final episode, the final season of Discovery. And just a couple of days ago, we got big announcements about two other shows. One of them is Strange New Worlds, which has been renewed for a further season. And the other news, very, very sad news, is that we now know that Lower Decks will be ending after their 5th season, which is the next season coming up.
Ooh.
Oh, that just hurts my heart.
Yeah.
So sad.
I mean, happy for Strange New Worlds.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I mean, the Lower Decks thing is just like, I don't know if we've ever lost 4 Star Trek shows in a year and a half before.
Well, we've never had that many shows at one
I
time.
know.
anyways.
That's more cancellations than I'm accustomed to.
Exactly.
Yeah,
At least Picard ran its 3-year course. They kind of expected.
Yeah,
but
we knew that going in.
yeah.
And Kurtzman has said many times it's tough in the streaming era to get a show past 5 seasons. And I don't know this for a fact, but I think that a lot of the original contracts are set up for 5-season contracts, and you have to renegotiate. And so the shows get more expensive after that.
Oh, yeah.
I still think, I mean, Lower Decks has got to be the cheapest show they make.
That's what I would think too.
I haven't seen any like budget numbers for Lower Decks, but I did find like Rick and Morty is like $1.5 million per episode. Like Family Guy's like $2 million an episode. I mean,
Wow.
even the Star Trek Picard season 3 was like $10 million per episode.
Well, and, when you're saying that, if you remember back in the Next Generation days, the budget that they always told us that they had was $1.5 million per episode for a 45-minute live action show.
Right.
That tells you a lot about
and it's 30
inflation.
years of inflation too. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Lower Decks could have run and run.
You would think.
Yeah,
Agreed.
And I mean, everyone's being sort of diplomatic, but Jack Quaid did make some comments on his Instagram about, CBS or Paramount decided not to continue with the show. We hope to find a new home, that sort of thing. What makes it feel more like a cancellation than the announcement did. The announcement kind of made it seem like it was coming to an end.
Right.
Yes, exactly. I thought that was very interesting. The difference in tone.
Right. Absolutely.
But I mean, at least we know that we're getting more Strange New Worlds. So we know that season 3 is on its way and should be landing sometime in this coming year. And we know that they have a 4th season beyond this year. So do we think that Strange New Worlds is going to last 5 years and that's it?
Probably.
Yeah, that'd be my guess.
That's what I think too. Yeah.
Which
I mean, that's like the new
sense.
standard.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense for Strange New Worlds, at least, because it's ostensibly before the original series. Eventually, we're gonna run into the original series time frame.
Yeah,
but also, the 5-year thing kind of feels right for a TOS type show. I don't know. I just the Lower Decks thing doesn't sting in the same way that Prodigy did. Because they're not canceling it and not airing the new season that they already made and also deleting it.
Right. So at least we know, because they did say that, even after that point, Lower Decks will still continue to be available. Past episodes will still continue to be available. So, at least we know that that's not that same sort of situation.
Right. Yeah. And just setting my own expectations, I don't expect, and I said this on our Facebook group, I expect it to be available on Paramount Plus until they can make more money with it being somewhere else or nowhere else.
Oh, I know.
And then that's where it'll be.
Oh, I know, because that's what they've done with the original movies.
Yeah,
They keep them for a while until somebody wants to pay them for it, and then they ship them off, and they're somewhere else for 6 months or 8 months, and then they come back to Paramount until somebody else wants to pay some money for them.
Yeah, and I don't even think that's the worst thing. I mean,
no, I agree. It's not. I mean, that's why you have that stuff.
Yeah, so folks who don't have Paramount Plus can see the show, and hopefully it'll get more fans. Now, I'd love it if it was like a big bluff, and then like coming next fall, Star Trek Upper Decks. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think that's gonna be the case, though.
Right. Right.
But I mean, if they want to continue making streaming movies, I think that Mike McMahon and his team would do a fantastic job. They've already made very cinematic Lower Decks episodes.
Yeah.
Sometimes astonishingly so. I would love to see them do a series of Lower Decks films. Maybe that would be
that'd be amazing.
More in the budget. I hope to see them continue because I love these characters and I love the show.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Before we transition to the next thing, Matt says good evening, and Jay says hey there.
Howdy.
Hey everybody.
Thanks everybody for watching.
Absolutely.
Oh, wait, now Matt is saying, I hope we get another hand-drawn animated Trek series.
I would love Mike McMahoniverse.
Yes.
I would watch 4 shows that he made. They could probably make 4 shows for the cost of a live action show, and I would just watch them all year.
Yep.
Right. I think that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. So did we have more news, or was that our news?
That's our news.
All right, Keith, do we have any This Week in Trek this week?
Yeah, real quick thing. One other thing I would say real quickly on the Lower Decks. It was so funny, the episode that had Jack Quaid on, what was the one where they went live? I can remember the name. Everybody loves it.
Those Old Scientists.
Yeah. What's funny about that was I think we commented on how amazingly well they worked in live action for people that you'd only seen in animation. And I saw online somebody said they wish they could have a live action version of them, but then the person started saying, "Oh, but you'd have to do time travel because Jonathan Frakes and everybody is too old." And I thought, no, you don't have to, because you don't have. Yeah, you don't have to insert the TNG and Voyager crews into a live action for them, especially if they did a TV movie like we keep talking about now. I think they would work as a live action too.
But I mean, Lower Decks is set a little farther down the TNG timeline to where you wouldn't have to worry about that, because Riker can be as old as Jonathan Frakes is right now, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, the Lower Decks cartoon is set just like right after Nemesis, so they're still,
I mean, it's not right
decades off, but I mean, you could just, I mean, I'd be happy they came back with Captain Mariner and First Officer Boimler, and they're put a little gray on the temple and then just continue on. Like, who cares?
a little gray in the purple.
Yeah, or give Boimler like the Picard, you know, just make him bald on top.
Oh, that's
who knows?
Only we find out he shaves his head
to look like Picard.
Yeah, he would.
You know, in real life future, at some point, everybody would have a synth body anyway. But unlike Picard, they wouldn't let them preset it to be like 90 years old. So, so real quick on the track news, just a couple things I thought stood out really well. This is one, it just goes without saying. This comes up on everybody's list on the 14th of April, 1966. And if you think about the first time this was aired on primetime television, was the story outline was delivered for a show that they were a little concerned about. It was called Balance of Terror. And everybody, I mean, you know, again, this one of those, like Marvel Comics says, "Nuff said." You know, it's famous because the cloaking device was actually a plot device, because there were, was it Wachang who designed the Romulan ship, but there was also concern about the amount of time and money it would take to film the ship. They had the model, and so one of the things that they came up with was the idea of cloaking, so that they could minimize the amount of times they had to show the Romulan ship. And boy, did that end up working out incredibly well.
They still use that trick. Like just last week, there was a creature on Discovery that was invisible half the time.
Right.
Right. And then it's funny when you listen to the behind the scenes stuff, there was a real big argument about, should the Romulans look like Vulcans? Would the audience not buy it? There are actually some people, because again, remember, this is 1966. Some people are saying, look, we already got this weird pointed ear devil dude that nobody's probably going to go for. Now you're going to have a whole race of people who look like him. And it is now considered literally one of the best shows in the entire franchise, not just that series. So amazing.
Yeah.
One more. Oh, here we go. 15th of April, 1998. This is a classic. In the Pale Moonlight aired for the first time.
Wow.
That's a
Wow.
classic. I didn't think anybody liked that one.
It's always ironic to me. That's an episode that Gene Roddenberry, rest his soul, would have hated in every shape, form, or fashion possible, because it is 100% against everything he thought Star Trek should be. And it's considered one of the greatest episodes, again, of the franchise because of the things that Sisko did in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
People still debate, though, the whole what would Picard do? Would Jean-Luc Picard have sanctioned murder and stuff? Probably not. But he's not Sisko. Sisko slugged Q, Picard didn't. So,
Yep.
Well, and Picard wasn't faced with the same choices. Like Picard never had to grapple with, not on screen, a galactic war going on.
Absolutely.
That they're losing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about, I forget the name of the episode. Is it Starship Mine? Remember the one where the people came on board the ship? One of them was Tuvok, basically, and they were stealing the trilithium to make bombs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charles, to your point, that Picard at the end, I love that scene, is when they said something like, do you know anything about him? And then the ship blows up. The Picard's looking at the control rod, and he goes, I know they won't get very far. Now, that's the Picard I could see do something like Sisko.
Right.
Yeah. And then the last one, and this is talking about goodbye. We're talking about series ending and finales. 20th of April, 1999. They wrapped filming on Deep Space Nine.
Oh.
With the final scene of What You Leave Behind, which I think is ironically was shot in Vic's Lounge.
Wow.
What if that doesn't tell you that was a different Star Trek show? I don't know what does.
Yeah, and that was it was a great finale. It was a great final arc. The whole last 8 episodes of the show were fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, great. That was and that was this week in Star Trek history.
Awesome. Well, let's take a quick break for a commercial or two, and then when we come back, we'll be talking about Star Trek Discovery: Face the Strange. So stay right there.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't quite ready to already go to commercials. So here we go.
Attention, people of Earth!
Turned on the TV late last night,
'cause I felt nerdy.
Saved the galaxy from a fright,
'cause I felt nerdy. Turned on the TV late last night, 'cause I felt nerdy. Defied gravity and took flight, 'cause I felt nerdy.
Exterminate, okay, destroy. I have to go. Having some problems up here. Good luck, stay safe, see you soon.
That's it.
Oh, right. Spoilers. Spoilers.
Hey, good job.
Yeah.
Wow. Direct and to the point.
She put a lot of thought into that one.
Yep. Sometimes we do 2 commercials, so I got confused.
I know.
All right. Well, we're back talking about Star Trek Discovery: Face the Strange, which I think is my favorite episode of Discovery.
Indeed.
Up to this point.
What, like all Discovery?
Yeah, of all Discovery. I think this
Holy
is my favorite episode.
Wow.
I like the other time travel one
Okay.
better.
Okay.
Which one was that?
Where they were all where Stamets was like repeating the same day over and over again, and he had to convince people.
Yeah, from season 1.
Oh, was that
Harry Mudd? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't like that Harry Mudd, but
What do you
This
guys
was right
think?
up there.
Keith and Alan?
I thought it was actually good. It was funny because when they were first doing it, it's so funny because first off, I was thinking it almost would seem like it was going to become a clip show, even though it was not like, actual clips lifted. And then I thought, but they wouldn't have been doing that because they had no clue this was their last season, because it could almost be like, oh, here's the last season to kind of show you that wasn't the point. Then as they showed all the different scenes with them fighting and so forth, I thought, well, this is not a clip show. And it actually worked. One of the things I like is kind of the message of the show Rayner is getting is that, we've talked about before, you don't have to be completely cold and authoritarian, and you don't have to go the other way where you can be too nice. There's a thing in the middle. And with the old and new crew, for the first time, I think that the camaraderie between Michael and the rest of the people really worked. It felt a little more natural to me than ever before. And I like the contrast between Michael, who's what you call a kind of a nice person, but a strong person.
Mm.
And Rayner, who's trying to learn to be different, because Michael smiles a lot. And no people complain that she emotes too much. I've said that, but I like her ways. It's kind of like Captain Pike. He's different from Kirk and Picard, but he's still a strong captain.
Right.
And I really got that today from the show. I thought it was really good.
Okay.
Well, I thought it was fun as hell.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. And Keith, you brought up something that I was going to kind of get to a little bit later, but talking about them not knowing that this was going to be their last season. And we know that because we know that after they wrapped filming, they were told, and they're like, oh, holy smokes, what are we going to do now? We got to like call people back and film something. Anyway, but there was something else that happened earlier this season that we said on our show that felt like something you would have done if you had known that this was the final season.
Right.
You know, so this is 2 times now. And if you remember in Voyager's final season, and I didn't get a chance to look up the episode before we came live. Thank you, Shattered. It was basically a Voyager's greatest hits episode where they bounced around into different time frames, all at different important points in Voyager's past. And Discovery did exactly the same thing here. And it just feels like they are wrapping up.
Yeah.
It feels like they are
does.
reminding you everything that has gone on before and how these characters have changed and grown by having them confront themselves in a past, iteration. And it seems like they at least had an inkling.
They had to have suspected. I thought that watching
had
today.
to have. Right.
And I was saying the first episode this season that one of the things that I'm looking for, that I want to see in a final season, is for it to tie back in with the overall story of the show.
Right.
You want the end to sort of mirror the beginning. So we all know that they don't have a master plan for these shows. They're cobbling they're cobbling them together as they go along. But by the end, you hope that they will have sort of woven it in. So when you start watching it, you feel like you're watching a story from beginning to end.
Absolutely.
And this episode absolutely did that. It really, not only with what Rayner's going through this year, with him having his second chance and things like that, but tying that in with Burnham's story. And really, I mean, the story of the show is this woman who came on the ship disgraced as a convict and worked her way back up and got her second chance and never gave up and made it back to captain, or made it up and became captain of the ship. And she did it by establishing these relationships with people and earning people's trust. And it took her a long time and she had to work at it. But I mean, it really does make it feel like this is a story. You could watch it from the beginning, knowing where it's going. And I think it's great for the show to reflect back on where it's been over all these different I mean, no show has had as much change going on as Discovery. I mean, they jumped 900 years into the future, new uniforms, new everything.
Right.
But I think this episode really tied it all together thematically with what's going on the show right now. And I mean, I just think it worked beautifully.
Absolutely. And to the point that you're just now making, not even with the character things, but the overall plot too, because we even get, we had the Short Treks episode that happens in the future after the death of the Vadrash, and you don't know how it got there. You don't know why the things happened that led it to that episode. You don't know what happened to the crew. Now we know.
Yeah. Or I mean, they sort of left themselves an out, because when they came on board, Zora said, "Is this another dream?" And so you can sort of imagine that was I mean, if it doesn't line up 100%, because for one, in Calypso, the outside of the ship was still like the season 1 style, they had
exactly.
But you can imagine that was a dream. There's enough elements of things that have happened on the show sort of woven into that great little short that maybe that was one of Zora's dreams.
Absolutely. So let me get a couple of comments about what we're talking about at this moment. First is from Matt Sweatman, who says, "This episode is where I realized the crew of the Discovery is so used to changing uniform styles, they don't even bat an eye when someone shows up in a completely different one."
They batted a few eyes.
There were. Linus certainly batted some eyes.
Yeah.
But he said Red was good on her.
Elaine Sweatman says, "I love this episode. It was lots of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing if Burnham's interaction with Booker, in the past, will change how she feels and acts about him in the present." Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, they're going to get back together, right?
Of course they are.
They have to.
They got to.
And then he dies.
No, and then he comes back to life with the progenitor tech.
Probably.
Yes.
Matt says, she needed reminded about the abs. Right? I mean, you can see it too.
Yeah.
And Elaine then says, also, I loved seeing more Reno on my screen. Well, I will
Yes.
never turn down more scenes with Reno.
I
At
had
first,
a lot of the bridge crew in this one.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of Reno. And at first, I thought, well, maybe they're just traveling to all the episodes where she had screen time.
Right.
That's why Reno's always there. But no, that wasn't the case. But
Right.
I love seeing her. She had great reactions to things. I like that she sort of got along with Rayner, and I liked her little. I like when she said to Stamets, "Are you caught in a time loop?" It's like, no,
Right.
why?
Just fun you. Oh my
was
God.
funny.
She's so great.
Yeah, this episode has some nice, fun moments.
Mhm.
Yeah. So going into the opening, I think it was going into the opening credits, the sort of like pre-credit cliffhanger was they're in a wormhole and Mr. Captain Weird Ears, whatever his name is, Rayner, I know it's Rayner, but he says, "What's that red thing?" And she goes, "That's me. That's the Red Angel." And I was like, holy flip. Like I lost my mind. And if it had been an episode where they were thrown back to that point and the episode took place at that time and sort of interwove with what they did in that final episode of season 2, I would have freaking loved it.
That would have been really
But
cool.
they doubled down on it and sent them to all these other freaking episodes, and even points that we've never seen before, like Discovery in Dry Dock.
Yeah, Discover.
I loved that so much.
And since they didn't show it from the outside, I'm going to pretend
Yeah.
that it was just a section of Discovery that was being constructed before they launch it into orbit to assemble the ship in space. Because I hate when they build these ships on the Earth.
I mean,
I know. They didn't show it, so I can pretend it.
that's right.
I like
That's
that guy's
right.
outfit and his little hat, though.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
That was good.
Yeah.
But I liked the way that they have been working Burnham and Weird Ears this whole season. I liked the way that this episode was, first of all, a fun episode and a clever premise, and it was executed really well, but it also focused on that relationship between this captain and her new first officer and getting them to come to terms with each other and him accepting his place on the ship and her command style.
Yeah.
I thought it was so well done, and I thought that he was the star of the episode as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I thought he was great.
Yeah.
I mean, and he was a bit abrasive to do the beginning. I mean, you don't know they're not out there hiding. You know what I mean? If there are people hide, you don't pick them up all the time. But then I like when he snapped at Burnham and acknowledged, he's like, "I'm over the line."
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's having to get used to what he's doing, and I mean, he's been in command for a long time. He's not
exactly
accustomed to being the first officer again.
Yeah, this would be like putting Jellicoe as Picard's first officer, and that would not go well.
Yeah,
so,
and I like that he got to see what this crew has been through over the years and how much they've changed and how much Michael specifically has changed from the beginning.
Yeah, especially since he's all like, you didn't go through the burn. You don't know what it was like. And she's like, you know what, buddy? That's over with. Let's see what we've gone through now.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was a weird statement considering you're talking to someone whose whole family is dead and she's in the future and all this kind of stuff. Like, dude, you want to talk about change? I mean, seriously?
Yeah, like we were in the Klingon War, dude. Where were you? Oh, not born.
But on the bridge, and the thing that kind of leads up to this whole episode premise, on the bridge, she's communicating with all the departments represented by the bridge crew. And Detmer's got something to say, and Owa's got something to say, and then Reese chimes in with his observation, and Lorca cuts every one of them off, and he's like clippy, and he's like, kind of driving them, and he's not very nice, and he's sarcastic. And she looks at him when he shuts down Reese. That look that she gave him was like, "Oh, dude, you have messed up now." And then she says, "Mr. Reese, please take the con." And she was like, dragged him into the office to dress.
Well, rightly so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed. I mentioned the same thing last week with her looks. And that's what I love about her is you don't have to be a hard ass to be tough, because Michael is one of those, some people kind of half smile and it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
She kind of has that little look, and he, like you said, even he goes, "Oh shit!" I just. One thing I thought was funny that kind of got them later, and it had nothing to do, and I didn't know it was going to go. I was like, "Can y'all not walk to the ready room?"
Exactly.
I mean,
That's exactly what I was like. Come on.
a transporter. I mean, like you. I mean, I guess people nowadays, like, you got to go to the bathroom. Would you transport yourself to the bathroom?
Sometimes.
Yes.
Those moments
yes, I
do
would.
come.
I'm laying in bed. It's like, I don't want to get up.
It's an emergency transport.
That was kind of funny, but yeah, I love the interaction between them, and I also thought it was very interesting, as you were saying, is they showed how incredibly competent Michael was, and her style was different. Different styles doesn't mean that one is weak and one is better. And I love that the way they showed how she just got the job done, and her people were smart, and you listened to them.
But speaking of one isn't better, that interaction in the office where she's like, I expect you to, accept my style of command. And he says, but mine's better. I was like, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Woo, baby.
I think he was about to get slapped down about that, because you can't have that. That's the thing right there.
Absolutely not.
You can't have
and he realized that.
Yeah.
And he grew over the course of the episode. Which I like to see, because you don't always get that over the course of an episode in these serialized shows. Sometimes they stretch. I mean, and he will continue to grow, but I like from beginning to end, you can watch that character go through a little growth and change based on what happened in this episode.
Matt Sweatman says it lacks a little something being summoned to the ready room without that march of shame.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
No looks over at Worf on the way.
Right.
There was one thing in this episode that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but they acknowledged it in the show, which is if you're fighting a bunch of guys in motorcycle helmets, don't punch them in the face.
Thank you.
It's going to hurt you more than it hurts them. But then
Right.
at the end, Reno said, you need to get better helmets.
Yes. Yes. But that used to drive me bananas on Deep Space Nine when they're fighting the Jem'Hadar hand to hand, and they punch him in the face, and they've got these big bony spikes on there. That's not gonna work.
Right.
Oh, that used to just drive me crazy. But that's for another week.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was neat I was hoping that we were going to get a little glimpse at least of Osira and not just her motorcycle gang, but it was still nice. It was still good.
Yeah. And I mean, I had the same thought about Lorca. I'd have loved to see Lorca, but I mean, that would pull away from this is about the crew. And what I mean?
Absolutely.
And these extra characters, I don't think would have been it would have been distracting. That's all that people were talking about was that Lorca was back for 2 seconds. Plus, I mean, Jason Isaacs don't fly to Toronto on the cheap. You know what I mean? Like he's not coming there to do a freebie,
right?
But I thought,
and I was thinking for Michael's arc, it would have been nice to have seen Giorgio.
Yeah, it would have been nice. Yeah, it would have had to be mirror Giorgio though, because Captain Giorgio
it could have been from
the
first episode.
Yeah, but she was never on Discovery. She died before.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. She'd be on the Shinzo.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Okay, now I'm fine with it not having Giorgio.
I would have loved to see Lorca meet Rayner. I think they would have bounced off each other interestingly. But I mean, instead we got Arium.
Yes.
Oh my God, dude.
Literally, I was just making snide comments about the lack of screen time for Arium like a week or two ago.
Right.
That's one thing I think everyone felt, because we were watching the show and there's this robot looking lady and she just never gets anything to do. Until I think it was Michelle Paradise's actually first episode, when all of a sudden you get all this backstory for her and interactions with the crew and stuff, and then she dies. And it's like, well, what a waste.
Yes.
So I love that they took this opportunity to circle back around and give Arium a little more screen time.
Yeah.
I was so excited to see her. And when they're in engineering and they're like, so who's on the bridge right now? And he's like, Owo, Detmer, Bryce, Reese. And I'm like, Bryce? Ooh, it's nice to see him again. And then he's like, and he just stops. He says, and Arium. And I'm like, come on, you got to do it.
Right.
And then they go up to the bridge and there she is. I was so happy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Interesting how this is something that is very typical Star Trek is, as an officer, what do they always say in Star Trek? Every time you put on a uniform, you're prepared to sacrifice. I thought it was interesting that to convince someone, you basically say, hey, you're going to die. And then that person's like, okay, got it. That's my duty. I do that. Let's move on.
Yeah.
That was why. I don't know. I mean, again, I guess they say you get trained for. I didn't know somebody came up to me and goes, yeah, dude, you're going to die. Therefore, you need to trust me. I don't know. I don't know what I'd be doing.
Yeah, it was a weird argument to make, but luckily it worked.
So. Yeah.
I liked how like everyone else's on the bridge reaction was like, no way, it would never happen. We would never let it happen. She would never. And she was like, yeah, I would. If it came to it, I would sacrifice myself for all of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I also thought that, first of all, it was cool to have Ariam and Bryce back on the ship. But it was also, I thought they did a great job of capturing the different characters' looks from that period and from the current period, because like Detmer and Owo both have very different looks. Their hair is different. Tilly's hair is completely different. And I thought also that Mary Wiseman did a really good job of acting like season 1 or season 2 Tilly instead of today Tilly. I thought she was great.
Yeah.
And she had a very, very, very small part in the episode, but I thought she was so convincing, as this is that Tilly that we saw at the beginning of her journey, not the one that we know now. And I thought it was so good.
Yeah, I think that the costumers, the makeup people, set dressers, they all deserve an award for this episode, because it was fantastic. Everybody looked like they should. And I mean, there's little things like Detmer has a different head attachment thing now. And like Owo's hair is different, and Tilly's hair is very different. And I mean, Tilly went through a couple different hairstyles over the course of the episode in different time periods. And Michael's hair, I remember me when I was a kid and I saw Face of the Enemy, and I was like, oh, they cut Troy's hair for this episode. And of course they didn't. They have hair ways of making the hair disappear. I don't know how hair works, but I mean, she looked great, and Sonequa Martin Green played the part really well.
So I don't remember Michael Burnham being that angry and that aggressive.
Yeah, the early, when she first came on board. Yeah.
Wow.
You know what I thought was
I need to rewatch that clearly.
What I thought was super interesting was that fight scene, because their moves were, I mean, because it's one person fighting themselves, their moves were like exact.
Yeah.
I mean, they fought exactly the same way as each other, and I thought that was such a great detail.
Yeah, and they're doing that Vulcan martial art that she knows.
Yeah.
But they had a comment they had a little featurette about it on the Ready Room.
Yeah.
And he was talking about they wanted, younger Michael to be a little more
punchy.
Yeah, she's a little more like enraged and less controlled. Whereas the older Michael is a lot more refined and experienced. And I thought it looked great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought was interesting is first off, Sonequa Martin Green, you realize how much she has not aged for the last several years, because the show's been on for a while. I thought it was interesting because in that case, she was not older, quote unquote, such that she slowed down. So you would expect the older Michael to win because she has more experience. She's a better fighter. And that's what happened. And then she nerve pinched herself. I thought that was great.
Right. A couple of good observations here is Elaine says it was good to see Michael fight Michael. Absolutely. And Matt says, I love Stamets trying to pretend to be grumpy like his earlier self.
That was hilarious.
So fantastic.
That and you're going to get spores in your lungs.
Yeah.
I am really grumpy today and I want to be alone. Everybody else.
And he's like, man, that worked better than your. Sorry, Veronica.
Yeah, I also like the quick callback to Voyager Burnham technology.
Yes,
that was the Year of Hell technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was pretty interesting.
Right.
That's a great name drop, because for one, I mean, Shattered, it does have some similarities. I mean, this episode does have some similarities to Shattered.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're gonna name drop just like a temporal technology, I love that it was from the time of the temporal wars.
Yeah.
And that it was Burnham, because the Burnham had that crazy technology where they just zap you and you're erased from history.
Right.
Yeah.
I also thought it was interesting when Rayner was still kind of sort of evaluating Michael and thinking she's not as tough as he was. I love it when she just tossed off, well, because of the spore drive, I paraphrase, Stamets is outside of time and space. And he was like, what? And then she could have said, yeah, now talk to me about who's been through what. It was just so casual.
I did like that they both knew things that the other one didn't, just based on their experiences. That made sense.
Yeah.
He knew about the time bug, and she had never heard of that. She knew about the tardigrade DNA, and he hadn't heard. Yeah, that makes sense,
Yes.
And no one's the know-it-all. They just know different things.
Yeah.
Right.
And it worked well together.
That's right. That's what makes them a good team.
Right. Absolutely. Now we got a little tease, sort of raising the stakes for the season arc along the way. where they saw the future where Starfleet HQ has been destroyed, the Federation's gone, because apparently there's weapons with the progenitor tech, which gives us a little better idea. We're talking about, I mean, just a few weeks ago about they need to raise the stakes for this,
right?
Than just these two people running around.
And that they needed to bring somebody else in on this.
Right.
And now we know who ends up with those weapons.
They've mentioned the Breen every episode this season.
That's right. Oh, we're leading up to something.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering what are those two after, because it's one thing if you don't kind of sort of don't care what weapon falls in your hands, but given something like that to the Breen, I mean, don't they live in the galaxy too?
No, they want freedom.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it
their
could be
goal.
that they lead the Breen there, or they find the technology and other people. Like, we don't know yet that they just got it and gave it to the Breen.
Yeah.
You know, they could have sold it to someone and the Breen showed up and took, I don't know. Or that,
That's
that one guy, we don't even know what species he is. He could be a Breen.
That is true too.
Oh yeah.
We've never seen them, so could be.
Yeah. Speaking of those two, oh, sorry, go ahead, Alan.
No, you.
Speaking of those two, I thought their transaction with that dude was interesting because she poisoned the latinum, and then she says, she said, "Yeah, I heard you try something like that." And I'm sitting there going, "Well, what if he hadn't tried something like that? Because you let him put his hand in the bag either way." So.
And he says, "You know, I'm turning over a new leaf, guys." And they're like, "Oh crap!"
Right.
I'm going to give this to you to atone for my past mistake. I did love, like, right in the middle of his little smug, like, "Let this be a lesson to you about." Like,
Right.
I like that little.
Oh my gosh, I still find them so uninteresting as villains. I mean, there wasn't enough of them in this episode to change my mind, but I was like, oh. We started out with those two, and I'm like, oh, boring, you know. But at least we got them out of the way and got into a super interesting and fun episode. So,
Well, at least, I mean, I don't find them super interesting either. I like them better than the first episode, but they really haven't. I mean, we're 4 episodes in; they really haven't overstayed their welcome as far as screen time goes. You know, they weren't even in last week. They just barely show up this week. So it's not like we're following them for half of the episode every week and not care. You know what I mean? We're getting little drips and drabs of them.
Are we thinking along the lines of Picard season 3?
No, I was thinking of Tarka.
Oh. No, I was thinking of what's her name on Picard, where it's like she's all over this thing, and you're like, are you going to get interesting at any point?
Right before I die.
Right. It's the Aryan syndrome.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like that we took a little break from the puzzles and clues this week. Yeah, there was still I mean, it was still sort of tied in with the story. It wasn't like a big left turn, but you know, it was a little something different. I think that's good. I don't think you can do puzzles and clues for 10 weeks in a row.
Right. And I feel like that's exactly the trick that DS9 was so good at in the last 2 seasons, where you have, of course, then you have 26 seasons per episode, but you have an episode that isn't directly about the war, but it's still happening basically because of the war.
Right.
So you still get that reminder of what's going on. And, you know, it's harder to do that kind of left turn in a 10 episode season than it is 26. And you have to do them in 26, you know, but I thought it was really well done. And it absolutely reminded me of some of those left turn episodes of DS9.
Yeah, and it was very entertaining. You know, I mean, Discovery sometimes can be a little dour. You know, so I like that there was a lot of jokes and a lot of jokes at the characters' own expense of how they've changed over the years. Things like Stamets and things like Michael. Yeah, it's the kind of show you watch and you're glad you're watching the show. You know, which I think it's just a lot of fun.
And it, you know, just like Shattered, it felt like this was kind of a gift, like a reward to the people who have watched for 5 seasons. And this is like not only have our characters grown, and here is like a representation of their journey, but here's the journey that you've been on as an audience.
Right.
You know, I just think that was a really cool little touch. Matt says poisoning latinum has to be a capital crime on Ferenginar.
I would think.
I like that he was mad that it wasn't in a box, so it's not as easy to count.
No.
He's like a bag. What is this, amateur hour?
That was hilarious.
Yeah, I thought that was
oh
good.
my gosh.
We could have had Captain Pike show up.
Yeah.
Captain Pike was on Discovery.
Oh my
season 2.
God. How did that not even occur to me?
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We didn't get any Captain Pike, but they could. I mean, they would have had to. I don't know if they have the makeup budget to take his hair back down.
Right. Right. Oh, that would have been so neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did like the Linus scenes that we got.
Yes.
And it really kind of showed the way that they used to use Linus, especially back in season 2. And they've not really done anything with him since then. And I don't think he had a single line of dialogue in season 3 or 4, one of the two. But it was really nice to see him there and to see him, just commenting his little silly comments that he makes.
Right.
Matt says Anson Mount would have taken some of the attention away from the story.
True.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, Lorca would have too.
But the nice thing would have been for Lorca to see where Michael had gone.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I can't argue with that. But I am glad we got Arium out of it, though.
Yes.
Oh my
because
God.
I think that's worth it. Because that's something that's sort of like finishing up some business on the show. That's something that everyone's felt on the show, like whether you liked it or not, that there wasn't enough Arium. I think everyone would have liked to have seen more screen time from Arium.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did get Arium in one of the Mirror Universe episodes.
Okay.
But she wasn't robot Arium.
Right. That doesn't count.
Right, exactly. Thank you. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So where do we think the show's going after this? I mean, are we back to puzzles and clues next week, or?
I think so.
I think 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we have to be. Yeah, we have to be back to puzzles and clues because they got to make up for lost time.
I mean, that's basically what they said at the end of the episode. Let's figure this out.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many pieces are there in the thing total? 4,
5?
5.
Yeah.
And they have 2.
We've got 2.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you've got. I guess what I'm interested in is where else do they go? Because when you have treasure hunts like this, the whole point is you go interesting places. So I'm curious as to what other planets it's going to be on. Depending on their mood, they could have it on. Assuming, did they ever determine if Risa is still around? You could get silly and have it on a planet like Risa. You could have all kinds of weird things. You could have it on a Klingon homeworld, or you could do all kinds of weird stuff with it.
I would love for them to revisit the Klingons before the end of the show.
Yeah.
Ever since they left, like they had the season 1 Klingons that made the internet so mad, and then they revamped them for season 2. All of a sudden, they had hair and different makeup. And then after since season 3 started, we haven't seen a Klingon.
No.
They've just avoided Klingons. I think they're just tired of getting tweeted at about Klingons. But I would love to see what the Klingons are doing in the 32nd century. Like I don't think we've even heard of them. And I'd love for this crew, because they're a group of people from the Klingon War, and I mean some of them still have visible scars and things from that.
Yeah.
To find out that the Klingons became allies of the Federation, and to have to go to I think that would be a really interesting thing where they jump to the future and they're like, well, our oldest allies, and like, who, the Klingons? And they're like, the Klingons. They're like, what? We can't work with Klingons. I think that's ripe for storytelling potential.
Yeah, absolutely. And we tend to not think about that because we're so used to all of the 24th century shows where the Klingons are allies. We don't think of it in any other way unless we're watching the original series.
Right.
But it's hard to remember that that's not the case when Discovery started.
Yeah. And they knew Klingons that were like eating people. Like my old captain got eaten by a Klingon. I'm not going to go work with a Klingon. That's like a perfect Star Trek setup right there, and them have to learn how to work together. I think that I would love if Klingon showed back up. We've got, next week we're at the halfway point of the season.
Wow.
So yeah, they got to do some more treasure hunts then.
Yeah.
Well, we've only got 2 more to find, and then it's dealing with the repercussions of what they find.
No, we got 3 more to find, right?
Oh, is there 3 more? We've only found 2 so far.
We've only got 2.
Oh,
right?
yeah. I was thinking of the journal, which doesn't count.
Oh,
that's 3 things, but only 2 puzzle pieces.
So episodes 5, 6, and 7 will be finding more pieces. There may be another
2 pieces in one episode.
Could be.
They could, but
I wouldn't.
We got to get to 10, and it's going to be like a 2-parter finale. So that's 9 and 10. So episode 8 is going to be, I don't know.
Maybe the breather before the 2-parter.
Maybe
the talking episode.
Maybe the in the cards of Discovery.
Well, I was thinking of that one where they had Osira back at HQ, and she had those great scenes with Vance.
Yeah.
Before they kicked her off into the Death Star trench,
Right.
But no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm enjoying this season a lot so far. I think they're doing a really good job.
I agree. I really enjoyed it.
It feels like they're hitting their stride, ironically. Unfortunately, with the last season, everybody feels comfortable with each other. Michael seems to, works in her position. It's unfortunate it's the last season because I am liking. I even like Stamets a lot more. Dr. Culber, I really wish they could give him more to do because, as we talked about last week, he's such a great character.
He's actually had quite a bit to do this season. I feel like Stamets hasn't been. Like, I kind of feel like Stamets has been sidelined almost until this week. Like he had a significant part to do in this episode, but I feel like he hasn't really had that much stuff. Except like little walk-ons and
but they've been laying some seeds in those walk-ons about how he's he's getting into this progenitor tech now because he sort of lost the legacy he thought he was going to have with the spore drive that was his life's work. And I think they're building to something with Stamets.
Oh, I agree. I'm looking forward to it too.
But I would like to see Stamets and Culber both in a more paternal role with Adira. That's something that I feel like has been missing from the show. I want to see them, being more of a parent.
In the opening scene, like after the credits, the first scene is Adira, dreamily looking at the picture of Gray, and then Stamets chimes in and says, "Hey, Adira, go do a thing." And my first thought was, is he Commander Stamets ordering a subordinate to do something? And if so, why is he not calling her by rank and properly? Or is he Dad telling his kid to go do something, even though the something that he's telling her to do is an official ship duty? And I thought it was weird that he's just like, "Hey, Adira, go do a thing," instead of Lieutenant, whatever.
Right. Tau.
I don't know. It's a little thing, but it was like.
So what did Beverly do with Wesley? Didn't she always call him Wesley, regardless of? Did she ever never order him around?
Yeah, he was never a nurse or anything.
Yeah. What?
So he was never a nurse or anything. But he also, for most of the time he was there, he wasn't an officer. I guess he became an acting ensign and then an acting ensign. I don't. He got a pip at some point, but I don't know. It's like Jake was never in Starfleet, and there was never anybody like Rom or Quark couldn't order Nog around. So we really haven't seen that dynamic. I guess we have in Lower Decks, but
true.
She does call her Mariner or ensign or yells at her,
Right. So we've got a few minutes left, and I just want to say if anybody else wants to chime in with their overall reaction to the episode or anything else, just type away in the comments.
I did love that Burnham got to fight herself. Because I was just saying recently how like Burnham and this crew they're in the 32nd century, but they're a 23rd century crew. The way they operate, she goes into landing party missions. Like she would have been a contemporary of Captain Kirk if she had not gone to the future. So just like Captain Kirk, like she's got to fight herself at some point. That's her greatest opponent. Like who else can match her? Captain Kirk wrestled with himself several times. I love that she finally got the chance to do
that. Did you say wrestle?
Yes.
Wrestle.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was good. I think the comment about Stamets is interesting because the last thing I expected, I've never liked the spore drive concept personally, but the last thing I expected was them to say it was going to be retired because they can't or don't want to really make it work because it needs the organic component in favor of, I think they call it the pathway drive. Right. And what a thing for him because he develops it back in the past. People died because of it. He takes it to the future and they're like, we don't need that anymore. So that would be quite a blow. And then he doesn't get, and it's not like they said, "Hey, Stamets, we can't do that. Can you develop a new technology?" Because they got another one, whatever the pathway drive is. So I can see that being frustrating.
Yeah, they say they don't need that, but every season they rely on it to get somebody somewhere they need to be fast.
Yeah,
right.
They just can't reproduce it. It's not a tragic flaw, which I think that's a great twist for it because I've never really cared for the fact that it existed. Because you think that someone else would have figured it out, even though Stamets is gone. But now we know why. Like 100 people could have discovered this across the galaxy, but they all have the same flaw that you have to have this biological navigator to make it work. And that's a hard thing to do because like the tardigrades are extinct and like Book's people had the natural ability, but then they got blown up. So, I think it's tragic that he thought that he had the next big thing that was going to open up humanity's future and the Federation's future. Is like he's the Wright brothers or Zephyr Cochrane, and turns out no, it's got a flaw. It doesn't work. We can't reproduce it. It's a great idea, but next. and having to deal with that. I think that's a great twist for it. It makes me feel better about the fact that exists in the first place, because it makes sense why it's never heard from again.
Uh-huh.
Matt Sweatman says, at this point, Discovery is the biggest hodgepodge of technology from various eras.
Indeed.
I kind of like that. And
Yeah.
that should have been what happened with Voyager.
Yes.
Not only,
Yes.
you know, a hodgepodge of technology from different areas, from different, you know,
Species.
regions of space, where they just have to make do.
Mhm.
And they never did anything with that other than Neelix picking up whatever food he can find on whatever weird planet they're on.
Yeah, it would have been great if Voyager got home and it was unrecognizable.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yes.
they couldn't do that from the exterior. They can't afford to do that in the 90s. You know, they have
Yeah.
to sort of use the same shots and stuff. But as
Yeah.
far as the interior sets, I would have loved if they had redecorated them year after year, or especially after Year of Hell, if they had not undone that and
Yeah.
continued on and the ship was just like cross-circuited, and I think that would have been great.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
But hey,
Yeah.
we're talking
And-
about Discovery this week, not
That's true.
Voyager.
Yeah, well, that whole thing with Voyager Discovery, it's always interesting about military secrets, you know, what they do and don't let out. So that's very interesting about, you know, with because like you said, with Voyager, their throwaway excuse was, I guess, you know, Section 31 had a lot of it. It was temporal, and you know they couldn't do it anymore. And so at first with Discovery, I wondered with the spore drive if they were going to do that. But to your point, Charles, I guess I hadn't thought about the fact that there's no easy way to replace Stamets.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you know, it's funny if you look at other races and people, that probably wouldn't stop them from trying. There'd probably be like a whole pen full of captives they keep plugging into the spore drive and
Right.
trying to manipulate their DNA. That didn't work. Trying it again and again.
Yeah.
But the Federation's not going to do that.
No.
Yeah.
Section
Right.
31 would like Sloan would definitely do that. He'd have
Mhm.
be
Oh,
melting
yeah.
people left and right. But yeah, I mean, I think it works for the story, and the fact that there's the mycelial network exists. Like there's a subspace layer that has this fungus that communicates that you can manipulate. I mean, there's been a fluidic space for 30
Right.
years in Star Trek. I can buy it. I've sort of made my peace with the spore drive thing.
I like that. I made my
Sort
peace
of.
with it.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, kind of, sort of.
So one final comment, and that is about the title of the episode. And most people who know me know that I'm an enormous Bowie fan, and I play drums in a David Bowie tribute band. So this week's episode, Face the Strange, that's a pretty well-known line from, or part of a line from the song Changes,
Mhm.
which this whole episode was about changes.
Yeah.
You know, there are two other Bowie references in upcoming titles. One is episode 8, which is Labyrinth.
Okay.
Yep. And then the final episode, Life Itself, which it's not an original Bowie song. It's a cover that he did of Wild as the Wind. And so Nina Simone had done it famously, and a number of other people had done it. And there's a line, there's a part in the chorus where it breaks and he sings the line by himself, and it says, "Don't you know your life itself?"
Okay.
So I find it super interesting. 3 maybe intentional, probably intentional, possibly just oblique Bowie references in our 10 episode titles this year.
Yeah.
Sadly, Face the Strange was not a Bowie episode.
Well, they used to crib titles from Shakespeare, so maybe Bowie's the new
Yes.
Shakespeare.
I'm not opposed to that.
As long as they don't start playing Beastie Boys music, I'm okay.
Well, and you know, maybe this goes back to Michelle Paradise, because if you remember back in season 2, when he was going to drill a hole in Tilly's head, and he's like, "What's your favorite song, kiddo?" And she sings Space Oddity. You know, so another Bowie. Anyway,
Interesting.
yeah, I know, right?
All right. Any other final thoughts before we close it out?
It really did click. Everything clicked. You know, the way the people related to each other, the way Sonequa Martin Green's Burnham has changed from that almost underacting Vulcan, you know, thing she was doing, to someone who's at ease with herself. They've gone a little bit through, we talked about over emoting, you know, the too much confessional that they sometimes do. She feels like a really balanced character to me now. And I think that's very interesting. We all talked about it's interesting how they grew that way. She really feels like a balanced character. Rayner is very interesting because the beginning of the show, I was like, dude, this is not a dude I want to work with. That's the kind of guy I would have been cussing him out in front of everybody the way he talked. And then he learns slowly. And that's always literally one of the toughest things to do in any show is to bring on the hard ass and try to humanize them without making it too corny. That's a hard thing to do. And so far they're handling it well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The thing that I loved the most about this episode was that the whole thing, other than Rayner, the whole thing brought the story back to that core group of characters that I love. The description of it was Burnham, Weird Ears, and Stamets get caught up in a thing. And I'm like, so this episode is going to be about just those three characters, basically. But I was really pleased with how well the rest of that core group of crew were integrated into this storyline. And it really, because like, I don't really care that much about Book. I don't really care that much about Adira and Gray. And they sort of like address those things in a good, but not in a dwelling kind of way. And it just got back to that core group of crew members that I used to kind of feel like had sort of a family unit about them. And I haven't particularly this season, because they've just been kind of scattered, and new characters have been introduced that aren't going to go anywhere. So I really enjoyed the fact that we got back to that close-knit group, and that was sort of the basis of the episode, was that yes, there is familiarity amongst my crew, but that's what makes us work. And that's what Commander Weird Ears had to learn. And so getting that sort of like family unit back together just made me super happy. And I thought it was just a super fun episode and really, really well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like this. I think this is my new favorite episode of Discovery. Not just because it was fun, which I like, and it was very well done, but also there's a lot of themes that are going on this season, and really in the show that I hadn't realized until watching this episode has sort of crystallized them for me of stuff that I really relate to. So, I mean, I felt this. I've really personally sort of connected that, and maybe more on Discovery overall. I'll have to revisit it, but it's making me rethink a lot of Discovery, which is good.
Wow.
I mean, that's what you want from an episode, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very
Especially
true.
going into a final season.
That's right.
How about you, Veronica?
I liked it.
Okay.
Well, one real quick thing you're saying about the whole thing with Rayner, it also reminds me of in all of the Star Trek, the best captains, they all have different styles, but they all at some point in time know that the crew needs encouragement. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to Rayner feels hold their hands. I remember, speaking of Balance of Terror, the scene in his quarters where Kirk is telling McCoy, what if I say the wrong thing? You remember he says, I look at those faces on the bridge and I realize everyone's depending on me. What if I say the wrong thing? I think of Picard in the alternate reality, Yesterday's Enterprise, where he says, no matter what happens, let's remember history never forgets the name Enterprise. And all captains, Cisco has been inspiring to his people. It doesn't take, it's that whole thing where some people think if you give compliments or you give something to people, it takes away from you. And I think Rayner's realizing that's not what it's all about. So I do like seeing him grow, especially considering he's an older captain, but he's growing and he's learning.
Yeah. And if someone offers an idea and you yell, shut up, stupid, you're gonna miss out on some ideas. Someone's gonna have a good idea that you're not gonna hear.
This is true.
But at least he was big enough at the end of the episode to realize his mistake and to acknowledge Risa's contribution and compliment him for it.
Right.
And we didn't have to wait till the end of the season for that to happen.
Indeed.
Right.
Right. And then it wasn't a big deal. Reese didn't thank you. Reese just kind of nodded. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was it. You move on.
Yeah. So I think, another important point that we were talking about, this whole thing is about sort of Burnham's journey from the beginning to now, and sort of looking back and making those connections to previous things that happened. But we got the same thing with Rayner. And his journey isn't as long in our eyes because it's only been 4 episodes, but we made those connections to his past as well, because he was able to pull those things that crew members had told him and use it in a way to make connections with the past. And like specifically the thing that Reese told him about the crossfield.
Mhm.
And I thought that was so good. Like you could see both of those, Burnham and him, both of those characters making those connections and learning from them and moving forward with them. And I thought that was really, really cool.
That should
That's
be
all.
standard operating procedure in Starfleet ships. Tell me something really personal about yourself in case one of us goes back in time.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Well, Keith, where can people find more of you?
You can find me on X and on Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups.
And how about you, Alan?
CosmicCreative.com. KOZMIC Creative.com.
And how about us, Veronica?
FeltNerdy.com.
And where else?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
And do you have a closing for us this week?
It's been a long road.
Okay.
Getting from here to here.
Burnham
She said it,
said
and
that in this episode.
She did. That was a
And I
quote
was
from the
like, and I
episode.
started singing the song.
Me too. In my head.
What stinks is I was all set up with like a counter to you not having a closing. And I was going to say, failure to prepare is prepare for failure.
Oh, I love it.
But you were prepared.
I was prepared.
Good job. You learned. All right, everybody. Well,
All right,
join
y'all
us-
take care. Join us again next Thursday night, 8 o'clock, for our review of episode 5, which is, hang on, let me get to the right page.
Mirrors.
Episode 5 is
Oh, no.
Mirrors. Oh dear, are we going to the mirror universe again?
Yes.
Hopefully not. That's too
Probably,
obvious.
though.
I don't know.
All right.
If they handle it the way they did this week, I'm up to see what they do.
Yep. All right, y'all take care. Have a good week.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.